What's up guys, today we will be going over all the new Warlock subclass changes, which every single subclass got changed on Warlock. Most of them are buffs, but some of them are nerfs. So we'll be going over all three and all individual trees on all three paths and see what changed in gameplay form, then also talking about the actual numbers and all that good stuff like usual. So let's go ahead and begin, starting with the easy first. So first, Stormcaller. There's only one change to it, which affects both top tree and bottom tree, not Chaos Reach, but the actual Storm Train Super. So right here on the screen, go ahead and read what it says. It says increase Chain Lightning maximum target count by 1. So what that means is before this update in PvE or PvP, whenever you held down the trigger, it would reach X amount of enemies, but now it does X plus 1 amount of enemies. So it's not going to be something you're going to notice too greatly, but it's going to be something that's there that kind of helps the super a bit in the long run. But once again, not nothing too noticeable, but definitely something that will help in the long run. But I just want to mention how underrated this super is with Crown of Tempest. It's actually extremely good. Like, just look how long this super is lasting, and I can kill all these adds very easily in one super use, which is actually pretty good. So moving on to the next one, which is going to be the Domblade changes, which once again affects top and bottom tree, the actual Domblade super. So reading what it says increase damage against minor, major, and mini boss combatants by 43%, then also increase the duration by 3 seconds. So first in PvE, this super was already almost as good as it could ever get in PvE. If you used it correctly and got at least like 2 kills per sword throw and didn't really spam, it was already infinite super as long as there were enough adds around. So the duration buff doesn't really affect the super in PvE, especially because you can use Phoenix Dive, which didn't take super energy but also gave super energy back on kills. So it was super easy to keep the super up as long as there were enough adds around. But the change that will affect PvE is the 43% obviously. So for everything except bosses, it got buffed by 43%, which will help greatly in like lost sectors, versus majors, and all that good stuff. Be able to one-shot majors, being able to kill an entire lost sector boss with a super now, which is actually kind of impressive because they have a lot of health. So that's definitely going to be a noticeable change to the Domblade. And now for PvP, I think the super was already arguably the best roaming super in the game, right there with Spectral Blades, even better than Nova Warp in my opinion. So once again, I don't really think it needed that extra 3 seconds, but it's not something I'm going to necessarily complain about or will push it over to the edge to become broken. I think it doesn't really affect anything too much, it just means you can skate around the map a little bit more during your super. Now to all the Voidwalker changes, which all 3 subclass paths got changed in this, so there's actually a lot of changes going on here. So starting off with the bottom tree Devourer, so looking at that, it says initial detonation damage increase from 900 to 1200, which is a 33% increase. Then also the lingering volume damage increase from 10 to 23 per tick, which is a 130% buff, which is actually a lot. So this Nova Bomb got a little bit stronger on single targets and also for ad clear, and this path is already, in my eyes, perfect with Devourer, so this is definitely a good plus, making the super a little bit better to go along with the subclass. Now the next path I'm going to talk about is Top Tree, which is the whole bloom one. It says initial detonation damage increase from 900 to 1500, which is actually a lot, 66% increase. Then detonation radius increase from 8 to 10 meters, once again a good change. Then the Seeker projectile detonation damage increase from 205 to 300, which is almost a 50% buff. Then they also improved the tracking on the actual Seeker projectiles once it splits, then also fixed an issue where they could prematurely detonate. So not only did we get more damage on the initial detonation than also the Seeker projectiles, we also got a larger radius, then also more consistent tracking, so there's a lot of really good buffs to this path right here. So what that means in gameplay form is that on single targets it's actually very consistent now, and almost all of the projectiles actually go for that single target. Before they just kind of went wherever they wanted and it didn't really make sense, but now they actually track whatever is closest to them. So for single target damage, all the damage will hit. Then for ad clear, it'll actually track individual targets as you see right here. And when you pair that with the skull, you obviously get your super back if you kill enough things, and you can just do this over and over again. And it's actually a really good path now. Before, when I played Nova Bomb, I usually played the Devourer class, but now that this one's so good and it actually almost matches the damage of Nighthawk, it's definitely worth using now. So moving on to the final changes for Warlock, and these are all of the nerfs to Nova Warp. Slightly slowed movement while charging. That's the only nerf I'll probably agree with on this entire list. Charging costs more energy, so the initial charge cost is increased by 60%. Then also when you hold the charge, it drains your super 60% faster. Then the duration was decreased by 6.8 seconds, which is a lot. Decreased super damage resistance from 56 to 54%, nothing too noticeable there. The damage against Guardians decreased by 27%, which means they can no longer one-shot most supers in the game, if any. So let's talk about this super in PvP. which is obviously why it got nerfed. So given all the roaming supers in the game, this one had the lowest skill ceiling and was extremely easy to use, but something like Domblade or Spectral Blades could result in more kills, but it was harder to use and harder to optimize. So I think the main issue with Nova Warp was the ease of use, so a large majority of players could pick up the super and maximize its effectiveness. And I think that was the main issue with it, not the fact that it was necessarily the best roaming super. Before the update, I would actually consider it the third best roaming super behind Spectral and Domblade. So I think changes that would make it harder to use would be better than just nerfing it to the ground where it's not useful in PvP or PvE. In between charges, it's very easy to get in like a shotgun shot or two on a Nova Warp, so maybe if you slowed down the charge time and widen that window of time that people could shoot you between the detonations, I think that would have been enough to make it more balanced and actually harder to use and easier to counter without actually having to destroy the entire subclass in general. In my opinion, the whole point of balancing changes like this is to balance the game, not make something not useful in the game. And it just bothers me every time something gets completely destroyed in PvE for the sake of PvP. And usually it's weapons which can be replaced, but entire subclass, that's 1 of 9 supers just completely destroyed in the game. Before it was actually a pretty good ad clearing super in PvE, and now that's just all out the window. Lastly, I wanted to make a video about my favorite build in Destiny right now, and since it has a lot to do with these changes, I'm going to go ahead and put it in this video. So for this build, you need either top tree or bottom tree Voidwalker. I would say middle tree before, but obviously not anymore. And if you're doing something hard, I would recommend Devour. If not, use top tree for easier content. Then once you have that set, you need Nezarec Sin. As you see right here, if you don't know what Nezarec Sin is, void damage kills increase ability energy recharge rate, which is your grenade, melee, rift, then also your super. Then you want to use something like Tractor Cannon, Kindled Orchid, then I prefer a shotgun. Then if you don't want to use Tractor Cannon, you can also use Hammerhead, which is void, then also pair it with Izanagi's Burden. So there's definitely a few different combos you can do with this build. Then the last step you need is to have a skull ready on standby right next to your Nezarec Sin to swap once you get your super fully charged up. And what you do is you basically use Tractor Cannon, Kindled Orchid, then also your shotgun on high health targets, and you get void kill after void kill, which then on Devour gives you a lot of grenade energy back, then also a bunch of energy for your other 3 abilities. And before you know it, you have like unlimited everything. Then once you get your super, go ahead and swap to skull, then you can have infinite Nova Bombs, and it's just like the most fun build I've actually played in a long time in this game. And it's very good for forges and strikes and things like that. So if you haven't tried this build out, I would definitely recommend it. It's super fun. But anyways, I think that's going to be it for the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts on all these changes. Do you agree with the Nova Warp changes? Do you agree with the Nova Bomb, Domblade, Stormcaller, whatever it is? The rest of the video will be this Forge gameplay with this build I'm talking about. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.